All right, Matthew, welcome to the podcast, my man. How you doing today?
Hey, Greg, great to see you, man. Great. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Well, it is not about me today. It is about you. You are the star of the show. So we're going to get into really how you built your business in the Pennsylvania market. So let's get it right into meat and potatoes. How did you get into real estate investing?
I kind of backdoor got into real estate investing, not even in the United States. I did a Fulbright scholarship in Spain, and I did my master's degree there, and I did a module on finance, and it kind of blew my mind. And then when I was traveling after that for like 3 months. I was kind of backpacking around Europe. I went to Ukraine, other places, and I almost ran out of money basically, and I realized, wow, I got to get to my career, and I got to really get going. I had a job in the States. I'm a chemical engineer by trade, and I wanted to stay in Europe so bad, but I couldn't afford it. I didn't have any residual income. I connected the dots and I said, man, what do I got to do to travel? What do I got to do what I want to do and not have to worry about a job or financial liabilities? And how can I be free so I can keep traveling? I came back to the States and I got started.
Beautiful. Okay, interesting. I've never heard anyone say that on our podcast before. That's an interesting. There's a lot of meat to unpack there, right? There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a
It's not a common answer.
no. It's a very interesting way. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's start taking the conversation this way then. You're in Pennsylvania. It's not like New York. It's not like San Diego. It's cheap compared to other places.
Yep.
Relatively cheap. Not saying it's dirt cheap. When you're buying a rental property now, because obviously that's what you're really good at, what do you look for in a single family house or in a multifamily to make it worth considering as a rental? Because I look at a lot of rentals and a lot of them don't make a cash flow. They just don't because the taxes are
Yeah.
too high.
Yep. So what do I look at? I'm usually trying to buy. I look at, all right, what could the property sell for today?
Okay.
If it's just an as is sale, if I close day one and I turn around and sell it, and
Okay.
I usually I like to have some margin of safety below that number, because if it cash flows at the value that I could sell it for, let's say it's 100 grand in this market, and I buy it for 80, let's say, and I know I could turn around and sell it for 100. There's enough of a spread there where I'm comfortable that, yeah, it could cash flow at 100, but I'm buying it for 80. I'm probably safe here. Like, I could liquidate this thing later if I had to at any
So,
time, and I'm safe.
all right.
So that's
So
that's how I look at it.
so you want to have an exit to where if you had to sell it for some reason, you could sell it at a profit and you're not selling it for a loss.
That's right. And a lot of the time, I'll just, because the single family game is so liquid compared to large
Yes.
multifamily properties, I'll come across a larger multifamily deal, and I purchased that home 4 years ago, and I'll say, okay, I have the opportunity now. I'll liquidate, and I have the deal to put the money into,
Okay.
because I bought it at a discount then. And then if time helps, this
Yeah.
isn't a flipping game for me. It's not a short-term game. It's a buy and hold game, and then you could liquidate later to scale up.
Okay. So are you doing mostly rentals and you're not doing a lot of flips?
Almost all rentals. I don't turn down flipping opportunities. It's not really something that I pursue. In fact, I actively market against, my value add in this market is that we aren't flippers and wholesalers. We can offer more because we buy and hold. So, I mean, there's probably been a flip over the year that I've tried, but it's almost all rentals.
Okay. So now you're buying these properties at a discount, hopefully, which you are. Like that's your goal, obviously.
Right.
Are you just doing the burr on these things? Like, are you just trying to get them at a price to where you can refinance and get most of your money out, if not all of it out?
That's right. It's all burr stuff. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Have you
And then,
have you heard of this strategy? This is an interesting strategy. You've probably heard of it. So with a regular burr, you do a cash out refi. You got to wait a certain amount of time for the bank to let the loan season, and you got to fuck around and pay hard money loans and all that stuff or whatever.
right.
A friend shared with me a strategy where instead of going out and doing a cash out refi, you buy a property at the same price you'd have bought it at, cheap,
Mhm.
65, 70 cents on the dollar. You borrow all the money up front for that deal. Like you borrow everything, like the purchase, the rehab, and even the interest you borrow in advance. And instead of having to wait 6 months to do a cash out refi, you find a credit union or a local bank to do a rate and term refi. And you're able to get all your money out within 2 or 3 months, or even a month sometimes even a couple of weeks. So you could pay off your short-term lender.
So yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I've done that more recently now that I'm experienced.
Yes.
And I have a balance sheet to support it. But yeah, I mean, I love doing those if lenders are willing. It's kind of like a refinance. It's like a purchase refi all in one type deal.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yep. And
Exactly.
there's
You're
an
kind of
earnout
like,
for the repairs. Yep. Yep.
yeah. He
Yep.
shared that with me, and I said, that's really good, because a lot of the times when I burr properties, I have to wait 6 months. It's got to get appraised. There's a bad tenant inside. I'm sitting there. I got all this equity, and it's just like sitting there rotting. But when you can
Yep.
go refi right away and get that money, basically put the long-term debt on the property, then you can, renovate it and just keep it, versus having to wait and pay interest for 6 months on money that you really don't even need, right? Because your goal initially is just to do the refinance anyway. So if you can shorten that process, that seems to be like the way to go. So that's my new thing I'm starting to do now with properties we look at. So we talked a little bit about acquisitions. Now here, I'm going to just be selfish here, and I'm sure the listeners are probably, kind of, say they probably resonate here. I don't have a lot of experience being a really good landlord. Not saying I'm a slumlord, because that's not the case, but my view on rental properties is very jaded, because all the properties I purchased have had bad tenants that I inherited.
Yeah.
And I just really I have a bad taste in my mouth, and I still have them, right? But I'm constantly just like, oh my God, are these worth it? Like, so what do you do to make your rental properties be able to operate without a lot of involvement? Because I have friends who have all these rentals, and I'm like, they get all these calls, they manage them themselves. I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like, you're taking a call for a toilet leak. Like, why don't you have a manager do that? Like, it's just doesn't make any sense to me. So how do you not lose your mind when you are responsible for all these people's houses? Because it seems to me like a lot of work, and it is for my small portfolio.
Yeah. I mean, there's only like really two options. You either manage yourself, like you said, or you hire a third party manager.
Yeah.
So I have chosen the third party management
Okay.
route, which has saved a lot of time. So I'm not having to roll out like an Appfolio or an accounting software and reconcile the books and all this stuff. I mean, I check statements, but I'm a very lean organization. I have two full-time employees plus like a lot of 1099 contractors. And if you're doing a management business,
It's a mess.
it's tough. I mean, so you need to really be dedicated to that. And frankly, I just want to renovate the next property. I want to find the next property that's been an eyesore for a neighborhood, that's been a problem, or there's a situation going on over there. It needs repairs. The neighbors are looking at it like, dang, this house, like, can't someone fix this or do something with this house so it's not a problem? I want to spend my time going after that house
Yeah.
and resolving issues for the community. And I don't want to have to worry about, oh, my toilet's leaking, or, my faucet's broken. And I make sure that the deal can support a full-time manager, a
Yes.
third party
That's a great
doing that.
nugget.
Yeah. And I make sure the deal can support it. It's underwritten into the deal. And then I can find the next house, the next property to improve in the community. And that's where I want to spend my time. I don't want to spend my time in the back end.
No.
So, yeah.
Want to hear how shot New York is? Get this.
Yeah,
I
let's
just
hear
got a
it.
tenant out of a property. The guy's actually a nice guy. I mean, he literally made me bleed money for 2 years. So I guess I don't know how nice he really is, but he's an all right guy. I'd probably have a beer with him, right? Took me 2 years to get him out of my property. Took me 2 years. So
2 years is insane.
2 years. Well, there was COVID, and then there was he was paying rent for a little bit, and then he didn't pay rent, and then we almost evicted him, and then he stopped, and it took 2 years to get him out, right? Basically 2 years. So I'm thinking in my head now, I'm like, now I got a vacant property. I'm probably going to just renovate it and have it as a second house for me. But I'm just thinking how do these landlords who do more real estate deals than I do on the rental side, what do they do to how do you make sure your property management company isn't putting schmucks inside? Because they're their own company. So obviously you have some say in it, but it's not like you're screening tenants. So what do you look for? What are red flags? How do you know? Because Pennsylvania is a little easier to evict, but it's still not easy to evict anywhere. It's a process.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
How do you sift through that? Because there's so many jokers out there who just want to get in an apartment to squat, and then you're stuck for 3 months trying to evict them.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the same things you hear all the time, but just really doing a deep dive on screening. So I look at longevity at a current employer. If the person just started a job, there's a lot of risk there. They can show income, but if they show me an employment letter, they could stop tomorrow, and where's the income coming from? About half of my portfolio is Section 8. So it's basically government subsidized housing where you
Okay.
follow the rules and they pay. And frankly, that was great during COVID because it functions kind of like a bond. It's like a
Yeah.
coupon on a bond, and it just gets paid, and you have to do what you have to do. But for the market rate stuff, I mean, who's in, I don't know in New York, but in Pennsylvania, there's PA judicial. So you just go on the judicial court system and you look, were they evicted in the past?
Oh, you can see that?
Yeah, you can see that. I think in New York, you probably can't.
I don't think you can see that. I think they changed the
Yeah,
law.
probably because they want to make sure people can get housing and they just push it on to the next schmuck, right? So anyway, so that's how, yeah. So I do PA judicial here. And then just the criminal background checks,
You
calling
look at
the
credit?
current landlords, and you really have to dig in. Yeah, credit. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If they have medical debt is a little bit different,
Yeah.
but like
Oh,
if
for
there's
sure.
unpaid, yeah, unpaid credit cards, unpaid cars, you're the next person not to get paid, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And they're
it's a
probably
deep
going to
dive
fix
of
their
all that
tire.
stuff.
They're probably going to fix their car tire before they're going to pay your rent, which is understandable. Honestly, it's like, I
You
get
got to
it,
get
but
to
I don't
work.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to follow all the fair housing laws and stuff like that, and you do. It's just you have to. There's a difference between just pulling a report and actually reading it and digging into it, because like you can't just look at the little like green or yellow light that comes on at the top. It's like, yeah, probably approved. Like you
Yeah.
have to in your software, you have to like actually look at it and ask critical questions.
Yeah. Cause you're basically giving them a loan for a year at a time, if you think about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they pay monthly.
Yeah. So it's like I think the problem with me is like maybe some other people, it's like, I, it's very hard for me to I'm a pretty nice guy, but like some bad tenants I've had where like they just treated me poorly and I inherited them. I built up such an adversarial scenario with them where I was emotionally pissed at them because I was not
Yeah.
getting paid. And it was very hard for me to empathize with them because I'm like, you haven't paid your bills. Like, you're mad that I'm evicting you. Like, you haven't paid rent. And they're like, well, I've been here for 20 years. And then I'm the one who bought it after the landlord didn't tell them that. And it creates this like adversarial kind of thing. And then anytime a tenant reaches out to me, I get angry. And now I'm starting to separate that out via like an attorney, just to be like, hey, if you have any issues, like call the attorney, and like he'll call me or call the management company or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's been my new kind of thing where like I try to not get as involved with them because it like hits me in like a sore spot. So let's flip over to the other side now. In your area, let's say you have a tenant who's not working out. Maybe they break their lease or they're a month to month. Like, how do you guys do an eviction in Pennsylvania? Like, what does that process look like and how long does it take?
Yep. So from start to finish, it's usually 35 to 45 days. Now it can get
Okay.
prolonged if there's an appeal, or if there are repairs that weren't done and the judge says, we'll have another hearing in 3 weeks or whatever. But for like a typical non-payment issue and the property is complied and there's no repair issues, it's relatively fast. You have to in Pennsylvania, you have to do what's called a 10-day notice to quit. So you basically have to say, hey, you're not paying. I can take you to court in 10 days if you don't pay. You need to put in your lease in Pennsylvania that they waive that. So you can just take them to court on like the 5th or whatever your lease says. And then the hearing's in 2 weeks, and then they have another 2 weeks to pay. And then if they don't pay, then you file the order of possession, and then the constable comes another 2 weeks later. So it's all in all around 6 weeks. Now that it depends on the judge a little bit and how they interpret things, and it also depends on like if there's any, like I said, any appeals or anything like that that goes on. But generally Pennsylvania is kind of neutral. I mean, there are some states where eviction is much faster.
Yeah.
There's some states like New York or New Jersey where eviction is much slower.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in the middle in Pennsylvania.
Have you ever bought a property in what's that New Jersey city that borders your area? What's that city?
Phillipsburg.
Yeah. Have you ever done deals there?
I don't go over that river.
Okay.
I don't go
I
over
don't
the
blame you.
Delaware.
Yeah. New Jersey is tricky for sure.
Yeah, I don't buy in New Jersey. I don't buy in New York. I only buy in Pennsylvania right now, and frankly, it's just I live here, which also helps. And maybe I'll buy remotely later, but the landlord tenant laws are attractive here, so they attract investment, and that's why I invest here.
What if you don't want to renew? Like, what if they're on a month-to-month lease and you want it? Because this is where I've gotten into trouble. The non-payment stuff is pretty straightforward. It's like you didn't pay, you got to
Yeah.
go. Like that's black and white, but the gray area in New York, and I'll just share the process and you'll probably throw up when you hear this. So they've been living in the property for more than 2 years, I think. You have to give them a 90-day notice that says
Ooh.
that within 90 days you have to vacate. And if you're not out in 90 days, we're going to go to court. Most people will not leave, right? That's the reality because they know how much leverage they have. And then and during the 90 days, you're entitled to rent. So they need to pay you. If they don't pay you, you can then flip it over to a non-payment and then go that way. When COVID was going on, it was a lot different, but now that's over. Let's say they're not out in 90 days now. So now they're in default. Now they're basically in a property that they don't have the legal entitlement to. Then this is where it gets weird. You got to go to court. And by the way, you have to get an attorney if you have an LLC. You can't do it on your own. And I don't think anyone should do it on their own anyway. Then you got to go and you got to get a court date. That court date will take at least a month, usually. That will get adjourned every time they have the entitlement to get an adjournment. Once that 90 days happens, though, you can't collect rent anymore. So now you have a property you can't accept rent on, and it's going to take you another 2 months to get to real court to actually get a decision. And then if they appeal or something happens, now you're out 2 months of rent, probably a third, probably going to get adjourned again. And it literally can take 5-6 months to get somebody out. So like my view on rentals in New York, I'm like scared a lot of the time to like mess with it. Like I still buy them, but I know when I'm getting into a bad property with like a bad tenant, I'm not expecting to get a penny for 6 months.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder why anyone would build in New York. Like who's going to build housing if that's the environment that you're operating in, right? It's hostile
Ridiculous. It's
towards
ridiculous.
property owners. Yeah. Which then makes supply constrained because people aren't able to build it and operate it,
Yep.
which makes rent
goes up.
And prices go up fictitiously. And it's all because supply can't be built, which is a shame because ultimately the people that pay for it in the long run are the tenants.
Exactly. And that's why it's crazy. They're
Yeah.
harming themselves. Like the way that, and listen, I'm not a political guy really, but the way that the system is designed in New York, it ultimately goes back to hurt the tenant because then landlords are going to be, even if they don't want to be, they're going to be more strict on who they let in their property because they know the second that person moves in, very hard to get them out. So they're going to do a lot of homework up front and probably turn down more people than they want to because
it leads to housing scarcity. It leads to scarcity of housing, which drives. And if supply of something goes down, the price goes up and the customer has to pay. And it's not politics. I mean, it's just economics. You just have to understand the basic principles of economics to understand why the customer can be hurt by certain policies.
Exactly. And it drives the rent through the roof. And like there's properties where like I bought one property for $950 and we're about to sign a lease now for $2,000. Because that was like, because the landlord never raised the rent and they trained the tenant to not expect to get a rent raise. And then when they sold me the property and I'm like, yo, this isn't going to fly. They're like pissed. And it's like, go look for another place. You're not going to find anywhere else, like even near there. Like, so you're living on like this. Yeah, it's a real mess. So the Pennsylvania area, Ohio, it seems like those states are a little bit more, friendly in the sense that you can buy properties cheaper. The landlord laws are much more in your favor. So let's get into like what deal finding now. So you mentioned, in your market, your competitive advantage is that you're going to close and you're going to keep it as a rental so you can pay more. So right now, what are you doing to find off market deals that you can acquire at a discount?
Yeah, I've been sending letters for like 7 years. So that's I just stay consistent with it. I'm now finally integrating with my CRM so that the direct mail can go out of there. So I'm not like coordinating supplies and with Upwork vendors and sending letters all back and forth. And so I do direct mail. My second, I recently, so I left my full-time job in, late last year. So up until that point, I didn't want to have a website because I was corporate. I'd been a chemical engineer for 12 years. It was great for financing, but I didn't want to have a website out there and map my properties. And I didn't want to compromise the lending side because I'm a landlord. So I maintained my W-2 until I amassed a critical mass. And now I can have a website. So I do websites. And then I do like Google ads, I do Facebook ads, and then referrals. I've closed 30 units just from over the years, just from a couple, like 2 guys that they find deals and they do more like affordable housing. But then sometimes those owners have market rate stuff. So they do like HUD Section 8 contracts. I have one of those that I'm selling back to them and this stuff. And they'll actually refer deals to me that are market rate because they don't want market rate stuff. So they only do affordable stuff. So I mean, it's those four things really. It's direct mail, SEO, website, PPC ads, and Facebook ads, and referrals.
That's amazing. Yeah, the internet leads I've always said are the best leads. I mean, they're coming to you versus you, and even direct mail, they're
Yeah,
coming.
that's so true. That is
Yeah,
so
they're so
true.
motivated.
Yeah.
They're so motivated. And even with mail, I found that those are really good leads too, because they're deliberately calling you, right? They might be calling you to tell you to fuck off, but if they're not doing that,
Right.
they're like, hey, I got your letter. I
That
want to
happens.
sell. Yeah, we got a lead yesterday, and the guy's like, I got your letter and I need to get out of this property, like right away. And we're like, okay, that sounds like something we can do, So
Thanks for the honesty. We can help.
we
Yeah.
can help. Yeah, no, that's great, man. So you're doing that, you're getting the deals off market. You got a good system going here. So like a lot of people have this theory, and you've done this successfully, so I'm glad you're on this call, but they have this theory in their mind where they're gonna work at their job and they're gonna get enough rental income to quit, and then they're gonna be living on a beach and they're gonna be smoking, hookahs and drinking margaritas, and the truth is that is obviously possible. They
Yeah.
read Rich Dad Poor Dad, they get cast the spell of real
Yeah. They
estate.
take the medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
Drink the
your honest
Kool-Aid.
opinion on how much, obviously it's going to be relative to how much their bills are, but like how many properties do you really need to have? Let's call it units to really have that ability to quit your job when you're netting certain cash flow. Because a lot of people think $300 a month is a profit. That's not, because you're going to have vacancy, CapEx, maybe it's $100 a month. How many properties, in your opinion, because you've done this, do you need to have to be able to have predictable cash flow that you can put in your pocket that you don't have to worry about putting into the next furnace repair?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really does depend on the market, but I'll give like for
In your
this
area. Yeah.
market, the Pennsylvania market,
Yeah.
yeah. Like if your goal is to do the beach hookah thing and you don't
Yeah.
really want to buy any more properties, you don't want to qualify for any loans, you could probably live and have a good, like comfortable living in life, like cash
Yeah.
flow and not worry about too much. Maybe 40, 50 units.
That's what I was
Um,
thinking. Yeah.
yeah, not like a lot of units, but like once, say it's $100 a month per door. So now you're like, okay, 4 grand a month, great. Um, but like now you quit your job and like, how are you going to get more loans? How are you going to grow that? You're gonna have to sell, and then you're reducing your income. So, and if you really want to scale it, and you're not worried about a W-2 income anymore to really like get that bank financing and stuff, you probably need 80, 90, 100 units, depending on your relationship with your lenders, your credit, your purchase basis of these properties. To really like the banks will say, oh yeah, like there's collateral on this balance sheet, because all the bank cares about is if they don't pay, how do I get my money back? And they
Yeah.
have to foreclose. The house cards falls down, and they need to get their money back. So to really get past that underwriting barrier and keep growing and scaling, it's got to be like 80, 90 units.
I agree, man.
Otherwise, they're gonna give you like terrible terms, and you're not gonna be able to like cash out refi, and it's just gonna be tough. But maybe less. But I'm a conservative person, so I'd rather like know that it's gonna work before I quit versus like jumping in and then finding out. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, they have this fantasy where like, oh, when I have 10 rental properties, I'll be financially free. It's like, yeah, you probably will have a good amount of equity if you bought them at a discount. So on paper, you'll look pretty decent.
Yeah.
But $100 a month on 10 properties, $1,000 a month is great, but like you're not going to retire off that. Like that's like
No.
you can do 3 wholesale deals a year and 20x your income. You know what I mean? So I always tell
Exactly.
people, like, if they're just starting, like, and they don't want, if they're starting out in real estate investing and they want to quit their job, they should probably transition into doing flips and wholesales to replace their income. And then
Yep.
once they do that, and then they're getting good at finding deals and learning the skills you need to have, and then you can start to keep rentals. But I hear a lot of people are like, oh, dude, I want to just build this rental business up. And, I'm like, well, yeah, that's great. And you could do that, but you need to be either staying at your job for a while or
Yeah.
quitting your job through flipping properties in order to have that income you just had at your job in order to then buy rentals. Like I didn't buy my first rental till 2020, and I've been buying properties since 2016. I didn't
Nice.
buy my
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
rental
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
2020 because I was building up my war chest, as they would say, to be able to buy rentals, right?
Right.
Because it's a responsibility. And a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to put a tenant in here and it's going to be all good. It's like, yeah, probably not.
Maybe. Maybe
Maybe.
not.
Maybe you get the
Yeah.
perfect tenant, but you got to be able to treat it like a business. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did, right? So let's cover multifamily, and then after that, we'll start to wrap the show up. So multifamily investing, there's some people who love it and there's some people who hate it. And I'll mention some of the reasons why people hate it, and then we'll kind of go back and forth on that. So they don't like how there's like 10 tenants in one property, and sometimes the tenants can all team up and take the landlord out. I've heard that. I've had that happen to me before. A lot of people just don't like how it can be transient, where someone's living in an apartment. They're probably going to want to stay there for a year or two. If they're living in a house, they're probably going to want to stay there for 5 or 6 years because it's their own house. Like, what has your experience been doing multifamily and single family? Because a lot of people, they have this dream. Oh, I'm never doing a house again. Oh, I hate houses. They're for the idiots, and the multifamily is where it's at. And then they do multifamily. They're like, this is horrible. So, like, what's your experience been like being able to do both?
Yeah, so I don't own a property that's more than 6 units. So,
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to speak to, 10 or 15, 20 units
Yeah,
or
but you got
whatever.
multifamily, bro. You got
Um,
freaking, that's awesome. The
yeah,
duplex is
yeah. So I mean,
multifamily.
I have 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, 6 units. I mean, really see I really like, I started out doing the single families. I really like single families because of the stability of the family. Also it's great because I'm able to, so if I purchase a property that never could have ever been sold to because let's say there was a hostile tenant situation there, or there were just massive amounts of repairs, an investor had to do it. There's not even a loan program to qualify an end buyer that's a homeowner. It's very satisfying for me as an investor to be able to buy a property that's in complete disrepair. It's a single family, or just resolve a tenant situation that's just bad for the neighborhood, and then eventually someday selling to a family to increase home ownership. So that's really great. I think there's value there. It's also profitable as well. So that's why I like single families. Your end buyer is a family. They're a lot of times that they
They're
might be an
liquid.
FHA buyer. They're willing to pay a premium in order to get into a home. You're increasing home ownership. It's a good thing for everyone, for society, really. So that's why I like single families. But the multis are good too. I mean, they have their benefits. So I like that the singles, the tenants pay their own utilities, because
Yeah.
that's the joke around here. You drive around Allentown in the winter, and you could tell which landlords paid the heat because the windows are open, right? So it's like, you know, I've gone into units before, the windows are open and everyone's wearing t-shirts and the heat's cranking, and it's like, who's paying for this, right? Well, we all know who is. So
Wait, so the
it's
landlord pays the heat bill on multis?
sometimes, if it's not separated. If it's separated legally, the tenants pay it. But a lot of times on multis in these older homes, it's still on one common heating system. It's been that way for 30 years.
It's probably
So
worth converting at that point if you can.
yeah. I typically
Oh,
do convert it because it's good
yeah.
for the environment too. Like, everyone talks about protecting the environment. Like, let's protect it then.
Let's not waste
Let's,
heat when the windows
right.
open. Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
I had that
So,
happen actually on a freaking. I owned a multifamily property and I ended up losing money on it. That was a different story. But the freaking oil. This was in the middle of the winter, or it
oh yeah,
was the beginning of
oil.
the winter, and it was like getting cold. And I was like, "What the hell?" Like every 2 weeks, I had to spend $700 worth of oil, and I'm like, "This thing does not cash flow." I'm like, "This is a complete
Yeah.
dog," and I'm like, "Get me out of this thing." And yeah, I think just with multifamilies, you got to have the right expectations, right? Are you going to do small multi? Are you going to keep it all? Are you going to try to syndicate deals? That's a different
Yeah.
business model. I'm not a big fan of that business model personally, but everyone's got their own kind of spin on it. And obviously it works. I just don't really like owning like 15% of an asset. I'd rather own 100% of a smaller asset personally, but that's my opinion. Like a
Yep.
lot of
Yep.
people are like, oh, I have 3,000 doors. It's like, how much do you really own of that, bro? Like, I know it's a cool
Yeah.
vanity
Yeah.
number and I respect that. And obviously you're smart for doing that, but you got 17 investors you got to report to. They own 70% of the equity. You own 30% of the equity with a partner. Like, is that really worth it? In my opinion, probably not, but to each his own. What are your
Oh,
thoughts on
absolutely.
syndication? I,
Well,
I think it sucks. I don't think it's very appealing to me unless you're
and in the
doing big time
multi,
syndication.
yeah, in the multifamily game too, the other thing is, who's your end buyer? Like, a lot of times the
Exactly.
appreciation, like if you look at a rate of return, what drives the most rate of return? And if you are using leverage, it's the appreciation. So if your end buyer is an investor and they're all sophisticated investors, they're all trying to get a deal, you're selling to 5 different groups out of, New York, New Jersey, wherever, they're all looking at the same numbers. They're all trying to get a certain cap rate, and you're going to get
Yeah.
what you're going to get. Versus in the single, and then it's not as liquid because there's a whole bidding process, and it's more complicated to sell multifamily versus single families. It's very liquid. So if you're looking to scale a business, you can pluck off single families, no problem. Eventually in my company, like right now, we're focusing on under 6 units, but we'll have a multifamily space, and the liquidity of the one company will dump into the
Yeah.
kind of long-term hold of the other, just to position equity long-term. But the single families are just liquid. You can
They're
sell them
liquid,
very
bro.
quickly. And so that's why I like the liquidity of the asset,
I
class.
think I agree too. Because let's say you have 45 single family homes. If you need to get some cash for something, you could sell 3, 4, 5 of them,
Right.
get couple $100,000. And now you got that gunpowder to go in and do whatever you need to do with a multi. Yeah, it's not, especially a big multi, like you have like 20 units, like you got to find the right buyer. They all want a
Yep.
deal. They're not
Yep.
going to be idiots. They're not stupid. Like they're looking at a deal versus, even if you're selling a duplex, you could sell it to someone who's going to live in one side and maybe rent the other side out. So it's a totally
Absolutely.
different game. Yeah, no, that's awesome, bro.
Well, the other side, like my multifamily friends will say, yeah, but if you increase the rents with market, then you could do a cash out refinance. And
You
while
could.
that's true, assuming you buy it at a discount, those discounts there's just fewer multifamily properties. They're harder to find. Now, if you're in a niche business, like either self-storage or like affordable is extremely niche, you can find good deals. And then you increase the rents, you mark them up to market, and then you refi. And I know people that are extremely successful doing that. It's just very niche, and there's a lot of
Absolutely.
compliance nonsense. But
Yeah, you got to go into a deal
refis.
knowing
Yeah.
okay, these rents are $300 a month under market rent, and I know the market rent for sure, and I know that this is a high demand market where maybe a fund will come in out of wherever and overpay for it, like a Grant Cardone kind of company,
Yep.
because they just have investors they have to pay. So you get the point is you got to just really know your stuff. You got to understand what your objectives are. But if your objective is to quit your dang job and have some cash flow, like you certainly don't need to be syndicating properties if you don't want to. Everyone,
No, and you need more than 10 units.
yeah, you need hundreds of units. And listen, if you're syndicating thousands and thousands of units, of course that's a beautiful business model. But
Right.
if you're kind of in that purgatory phase, it's probably not worth it. You might as well look at, keeping most of the profit yourself and having, a few hundred.
Yeah,
You really
dude, and
own.
that's what I did too. Because and I double hatted I started in 2014 till
Yeah.
2022, and I double hatted because I agree with your mentality, and I took that same mentality that I'd rather just own and control, not have to answer to other investors, and
Yeah.
and run my business the way I want to, and not have equity partners that I have to answer to and stuff. And I double hatted for a long time, almost 10 years. So, and then it's that's been my model. But there are people that want to just do large syndications, and that's fine too. But you have to know yourself as an investor. You have to understand what your personal strategy is, and it's got to work for you. Because if it
Yeah, you
doesn't
got
work
to
for
get
you,
clear on your
you won't
goals.
sleep at night.
Yeah, don't just follow like some guy on the internet talking
Yeah,
about
some influencer or whatever.
bashing.
Like,
Oh,
yeah,
if you don't have 40 units, you're a loser. It's like, dude, don't listen to that stuff. Just figure out what you want and go get it. Just do the work. I always say to my team, just do the work, and the work will take care of you, right? So
right,
Matthew,
exactly.
man, it's been a lot of fun, brother. How do people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you and follow you around?
Yeah, sure. So I have a YouTube channel, and also my website. We can probably link them up in the show
Yeah,
notes.
yeah.
Yeah, just pezonproperties.com, and we're putting out some good content. And just reach out. My number's on the site, and just get in touch with me. My email will be up, and yeah, just let's just connect. And I don't really sell anything. I don't have anything to provide or offer. Just reach out if you want to talk real estate and connect.
Pezon, Pezon,
That's
properties,
right.
PROPTRIES.com / just kidding, PezonProperties.com. So
Yeah,
make sure to put that in the
pezonproperties.com.
show notes. I appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun, my man. And we'll connect soon.
Yeah, that sounds great. Looking forward to it, Greg.